The Sheriff of Nottingham, Robin Hood's sworn enemy. Chapter 1. The boy who learned cruelty. Long before he became the dreaded Sheriff of Nottingham, he was a boy born into privilege. His father, a stern Norman lord, owned vast lands that stretched across fertile fields and quiet villages. The boy's childhood was not filled with laughter, nor with the warmth of love, but with lessons. Harsh, unyielding lessons about power. From the moment he could walk, he was taught to command. His father's voice rang in his ears. Mercy is weakness. Authority is strength. The people are like sheep, they need the shepherd's crook, and sometimes the lash. At the age of 7, while other children still played with wooden toys, he was handed ledgers of tax and tithes. He learned to calculate the grain owed by every farmer, the coin expected from every merchant, and the penalties for those who fell short. He absorbed the language of law not as justice, but as a weapon. Rules designed to bind the weak and protect the strong. He remembered once watching a peasant boy steal an apple from his father's orchard. The boy was no older than he was, thin and barefoot. Instead of scolding the child, his father ordered soldiers to seize him. In front of the young master's eyes, the boy's hand was struck with a rod until he screamed. "Let this be your lesson," his father said. "The law is not about fairness, it is about fear." From that day, the seed of cruelty took root in his heart. As he grew, tutors trained him in swordplay, horsemanship, and the rhetoric of kings. He devoured tales of conquerors, men who bent nations to their will. Compassion, kindness, humility, such virtues were never spoken of in his halls. To him, they were chains, shackles that prevented men from achieving greatness. By the time he was a man, he had learned the most important lesson of all. Power was not something you asked for. It was something you took. Chapter 2. The rise of the sheriff when the title of Sheriff of Nottingham fell upon him. It was as if the world had finally recognized what he believed he was born to be: master of the people, enforcer of the law, and loyal servant to the crown. Nottingham Castle became his seat of power. From its cold stone walls, he looked down upon the market town below, its bustling stalls and crowded streets. To him, every face in the crowd was not a neighbor, not a subject, but a source of revenue. Taxes were raised beyond reason. Every harvest was counted, and the fattest portion of grain was carted to his granaries. Every craftsman paid fees for the right to sell, and those who could not afford it were ruined. The sheriff's soldiers became his fist. They patrolled the villages, collected debts, and enforced his decrees with iron. Many peasants lived in fear of their boots upon the door, for if they owed even a handful of grain, the sheriff would seize their livestock, their tools, even their children, as servants to the castle. He told himself that it was his duty. The king needed coin for wars abroad, and it was his responsibility to deliver it. But in truth, he relished the control. The fear in the eyes of the villagers was a kind of tribute, sweeter than any coin. And yet, despite his grip, whispers began to stir. In the forests north of Nottingham, a band of outlaws had begun to strike against his authority. At first, the sheriff dismissed them as thieves, ragged men driven by hunger. But as time passed, their deeds grew bolder, their targets richer. Caravans of gold meant for his coffers vanished into the trees. Wealthy lords under his protection returned humiliated and robbed. And most dangerous of all, the poor began to speak of these outlaws not as criminals, but as heroes. At the center of it all was a name: Robin Hood. Chapter 3. The thorn in his side. The first time the sheriff heard the name, he laughed. An outlaw with a bow, he scoffed. "Let him come. We will hang him like a common thief." But Robin was no common thief. He struck with precision, appearing where least expected and vanishing like mist into the greenwood. His arrows found their mark with uncanny skill, and his band, the so-called merry men, fought with the strength of men who believed in something greater than themselves. Each raid was a humiliation. The sheriff's soldiers would march into Sherwood in force, yet return battered, stripped of weapons, sometimes even tied to trees as a mockery. Every failure eroded the sheriff's authority. Noblemen whispered behind his back, laughing at his inability to crush a handful of peasants. The villagers, once cowed by fear, began to smile when Robin's name was spoken. To the sheriff, this was intolerable. Robin Hood was not merely a criminal. He was a threat to the very foundation of power. For power rested not only on swords and taxes, but on belief. If the people began to believe they had a protector, if they began to hope, then his grip would weaken. The sheriff swore an oath. He would see Robin Hood dead, his body displayed in the square of Nottingham, a warning to all who dared defy him. Chapter 4. The cruel hand of the law. His methods grew harsher. Suspected allies of Robin were dragged from their homes. Men and women were jailed without trial. Some were hanged, not for crimes, but for suspicion. Villages near Sherwood were forced to pay double taxes, their grain seized as punishment for harboring outlaws. The sheriff's cruelty knew no bounds. He once ordered the burning of an entire hamlet when he believed Robin had taken refuge there. Though Robin escaped, the charred ruins remained a scar upon the land, a testament to the sheriff's wrath. And yet, the more cruelty he inflicted, the stronger Robin's legend grew. Songs spread through the countryside, of Robin stealing gold from the sheriff's coffers and handing it to the poor, of Robin humiliating noblemen, of Robin protecting the weak. The sheriff seethed with rage. He could not understand it. How can a thief be called a hero, while I, the law, am called a tyrant? He demanded of his advisors. But deep down, he knew the answer. Robin gave the people what the sheriff never could. Hope. Chapter 5. The archery trap. Desperate to crush his enemy, the sheriff devised a plan. He announced a grand archery tournament in Nottingham, with a golden arrow as the prize. He knew Robin's pride in his skill with the bow, and he was certain the outlaw would not resist the challenge. The day of the tournament arrived. The town square was filled with spectators. Archers from across the shire lined up to prove their skill. The sheriff sat high upon a platform, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of his foe. And then he saw it, a hooded man, plain and unremarkable, yet with a confidence in his stance that betrayed him. The sheriff's heart quickened. He watched as the man loosed his arrow, striking the bullseye with perfection. Cheers erupted from the crowd, but the sheriff smiled coldly. Now I have you. He signaled his guards to seize the archer. But in the chaos, other men in disguise, the merry men themselves, leaped into action. A scuffle broke out. The sheriff shouted orders. Soldiers clashed with outlaws, and in the confusion, the hooded man slipped away. When the dust settled, the sheriff was left humiliated, his trap undone. The golden arrow was gone. Robin Hood had claimed his prize. Chapter 6. The sheriff's secret fear. Though he roared in anger, though he plotted and schemed, the sheriff carried within him a secret fear. He remembered a night when, disguised as a traveler, he had ridden into Sherwood to see his enemy with his own eyes. In a clearing, he saw them, Robin and his men, not thieves, but brothers in arms. Around a fire they laughed, shared bread, and sang songs. Poor villagers sat beside them, treated as equals. Children laughed upon Robin's knee. The sheriff had felt something strange that night. Envy. He had never known loyalty freely given, never known the love of those who followed him willingly. His power was built on fear, but Robin's was built on trust, and that terrified him. He fled the forest unseen, but the image haunted him. It drove him to greater cruelty, as though by stamping out joy he could silence his own jealousy. Chapter 7. The endless struggle, the feud between the sheriff and Robin Hood stretched on for years. Again and again, the sheriff laid traps, poisoned bait, false pardons, ambushes, yet Robin always slipped through his grasp. Again and again, Robin struck at the sheriff's wealth and pride, leaving him angrier than before. To the sheriff, Robin became more than a man. He became a symbol of defiance, a ghost haunting every plan, every dream of control. And though history remembers Robin as the victor of these struggles, the sheriff's presence cannot be forgotten. Without his cruelty, Robin might have remained a common outlaw, but because of the sheriff's iron grip, Robin became a legend. Chapter 8. The Legacy of Hatred. The Sheriff of Nottingham never captured his enemy. His life ended not with triumph, but with bitterness, consumed by obsession. Yet his name lives on, forever bound to the legend of Robin Hood. He sought to be remembered as a man of power, the law made flesh. Instead, he is remembered as the cruel tyrant, the sworn enemy, the eternal foe. For every hero requires an adversary, and the sheriff was that adversary. His shadow made Robin's light shine brighter. His cruelty gave rise to hope. His hatred made a legend eternal. And so, though the Sheriff of Nottingham once ruled with fear, his legacy is not power, nor wealth, nor law. His legacy is to be the villain in every tale of Robin Hood, the man who could never conquer the outlaw who stole not only gold, but the hearts of the people.